I think it's because of the people who settled here first. People from all over the world, a melting pot, and how they came to this very remote place and were able to do the things that they did is to me an incredible story that needs to be told. One of the reasons it's so amazing is because of where it is. How did they do it? Why did they do it?
Projects like this, buildings like these are irreplaceable. Once they're gone, they're gone. That one up there it's one of a kind.
I doubt that there's another structure like it in the world.
And even though the building is fairly close to Silverton as the crow flies, it seems like you're a long ways away.
The conditions are pretty grueling.
The why of that place really can teach people about what it was like to be involved in hard rock mining in this area.
Part of it was just the challenge of trying to see if you could do it. When you ask, why is a structure here, then you have to ask yourself, why are you here? Of what significant role did that building play and the people that actually occupied it? And that tells a tremendous story.
I think there was the adventure of it. I think there really was the adventure of it.
San Juan County is a very special area, and that a lot of the people there are very close to their place.
We're losing a lot of our history. We're losing the old timers that remember things. We're losing our old buildings. And so it's not just appealing to be involved with it, it's an important job.
In June of 1999, 8 people made the 2.5-hour trek through lingering snowfields to the Old 100 boarding house, a building perched at 12,300 feet on Galena Mountain near the town of Silverton. Present were representatives of the local and state historical societies, the Colorado Division of Minerals and Geology, the Bureau of Land Management, and 3 local contractors. These 8 people had come together in a unique collaboration with the intention of devising a strategy to save and document what is perhaps the last building of its kind in existence. With gold fever sweeping across the western United States, early prospectors began to illegally enter Ute Indian Territory in the San Juan Mountains in the early 1860s. By the mid-1870s, as the nation attempted to heal the wounds inflicted by a devastating civil war, and as treaties with Native Americans opened vast tracts of land, thousands of people would find their way to these mountains, drawn by the promise of a fresh start and the possibility of striking it rich. People of all backgrounds and from many different countries came to the San Juans, making the difficult journey over Stony Pass, down into Cunningham Gulch and into Baker's Park, the site of present-day Silverton. While some struck it rich, most did not. But all contributed to a rich history that forever changed this region. Many mines left an indelible mark here, but there are few that offer as striking a testimonial to human spirit and determination as the Old 100.
The Old 100 mine is a really old mine. It was one of the oldest mines in San Juan County. It is very storied. Lots more people poured money into that mine than ever got out of the mine. It was started by the Niegold brothers.
An early prospector into this area was Reinhard Niegold. He was from Germany. Within a year, this is probably 1873-74, he sent for his brothers. His brother was Gustavi Niegold, Oscar Rodell was a half-brother, and Otto Niegold also showed up about a year after that. They found what was called the Philadelphia claim, and they hit a very rich ore body of silver. But these guys were guys who liked to celebrate life. They had a propensity for good food, wine, and Turkish tobacco. And Turkish tobacco cost at that time about $5 a pound. By the late 1870s, their propensity for having a good time started to catch up with them. So by 1879, 1880, the brothers were broke, and they're still prospecting. They actually started to move some of their prospecting operations to Galena Mountain. The brothers mined several different places on this mountain from about 1880 through the early 1900s. But the whole time, these guys are thinking, which was the thought of many prospectors, is they would try to find the claims and then sell them to somebody who had money to actually develop the mine, because it's very expensive to develop these mines. So in 1904, they found Eastern capitalists from Cleveland and New York who wanted to invest in their mine, and those capitalists did a stock offering and started up what was called the Old Hundred Mining Company.
Beginning in September of 1904, the Old Hundred Mining Company began construction on what many hoped would be an immensely lucrative enterprise. The expenditure of roughly $1 million would eventually result in an impressive collection of buildings: a mill and boiler plant, machine shops, and 2 large boarding houses to accommodate miners at the uppermost levels, all connected by an elaborate 3-stage tramway running 4,000 feet from the floor of Cunningham Gulch. As 1904 drew to a close, crews battling fierce conditions began construction of a trail leading to the precariously perched 7 level, the highest of the Old Hundred's operations. At a cost of $32,000, this trail would provide a means of hauling the materials needed to construct the Old Hundred's uppermost tram terminal and boarding house in a most improbable location.
I'm assuming that the trail came this far, and then supplies, nails, boards, iron, rail, were all taken down this primitive windlass to the main level there. Now, by about 1905, when the trams had actually come up to the tram house and boarding house here, then all supplies would have come up those tramways and actually made the trail pretty much obsolete.
Clinging tenaciously to the side of Galena Mountain, this trail and the 2 buildings it leads to are all that remain today of the Old Hundred Mine's brief yet remarkable existence.
Through the years, we had known that the boarding house was deteriorating, and finally one day Paul Craybaker, our local Division of Minerals and Geology person, came in and he said, "Bev, the roof is collapsed all the way to the 1st floor. The 2nd floor is collapsing also." He said, "We're going to lose that building in 2 years if we don't do something about it." And so we had a meeting in Silverton. Loretta Pineda was there, Dave Buckman was there. And we said, "Would you guys like to partner with us on this project?" And they said, "Yeah."
Funding for these kinds of projects can be difficult. It takes time and a lot of energy, and you need to find a really willing group locally to help you with these kinds of projects. And I think that's where we were lucky in working with the San Juan County Historical Society, in that they have begun a process of preserving so many of their historical and cultural resources in the county.
As partners in a grant application to the Colorado State Historical Fund, the Colorado Division of Minerals and Geology and the San Juan County Historical Society would ultimately be awarded $49,800 to stabilize the Old Hundred boarding house.
What's very important to us is the idea of partnership. I think what's happened here in San Juan County is that we've got a heck of a lot of resources.
The resources for the restoration projects that they have, Zeke Zanoni, Bev Rich, I mean, everybody that's been here for all these years knows so much.
Critical to attaining this grant was the promise of an additional $18,500 in matching funds to be provided by the Division of Minerals and Geology and the Bureau of Land Management. The division and key people there would contribute valuable resources, including helicopter time for airlifting materials to 7 level. Meanwhile, the Bureau of Land Management's commitment to provide the additional funding needed to complete a nearly $70,000 project would provide the final momentum needed to turn a dream into reality.
The project is unique to anywhere in the United States. I mean, when you look at the boarding house and you look at the tram tower, you just don't find that anywhere else. And so it is important to preserve it. I was also swayed by how adamant and how in love with the mining history that the people in Silverton are. And the more I learned about it, the more I fell in love with it too, and it just seemed like it was just a natural thing for me to do.
The summer of 1999 was one of the wettest summers on record, and the project just couldn't seem to get off the ground, literally.
And the materials had to be delivered to that site in an effective way with a very limited window for construction by helicopter in this case.
You know, basically the contractor had a pretty short time frame in which to work that summer. It was a difficult summer with it being really rainy and wet.
Well, we lifted on less than ideal conditions. The first time we attempted it, we were rained out, and then the next day I think we tried again. We were fogged out. It set us back a good week, I would guess. Many attempts, many phone calls. You know, how's the weather down there? How's the weather up here? Helicopters were the one unknown. I'd never really worked with helicopters before. That was our main concern, was that we were so close to the cliffs right there that there wasn't a whole lot of room for error. To tell you the truth, I was very, very uncomfortable with just thinking that, oh, well, I just go in and just drop some wood in there. And I knew it was going to take more than that, but you know, the pilots that we had, boy, they were really good.
I had no idea what was happening up top, and then when he came down off that first trip, we thought, gosh, that's great. And then he reported that the wind was so turbulent that he just didn't want to try it again. Well, the first day of lifting ended with, I think, one load, maybe two loads, before the pilot decided that it was too risky.
The fact that there were conditions in place that might make this project not succeed or maybe not get completed never entered my mind.
In later lifts, it was a lot better, but each lift had the element of not knowing what might happen.
Fortunately, we had the best crew in the world, so that helped.
19 airlifts in all were needed to deliver the necessary materials to the site of the boarding house. While contractors Klinke and Liu would oversee the project as a whole, the work itself would be completed by subcontractor Bill Granda and his crew of 3. Spending roughly a week at a time at the boarding house, it would require 3 weeks of work in exceptionally rainy weather to complete the task of rebuilding the floor, re-anchoring the building into the rock wall, and replacing the roof.
The impression I had initially was, we can do this. But I knew that it was going to be a sales job to some extent to explain to other people that there are methods and materials that we can use that can hold this building to the side of that mountain to stop it from sliding off that are reasonable. A lot of what would have happened on this building was collapse of fundamental membranes, horizontal planes that help hold the vertical walls all together. And if you lose a membrane, like a roof, then the walls want to collapse.
On all historic and significant structures, as soon as the roof goes, I mean, it's logarithmic how much destruction happens in a very short time. Most of the roof structure was not there. There was very little of it left, and so we had to bring in new timbers.
And every day between 3 and 4, we had a major thunder lightning storm come in every day. I think it was only one day, and the whole time we were up there, the storms didn't come in. There was different specifications on different locations on the building as far as tying it off, epoxying rods in, cable on it to hold it in place.
I went up today on the mountain, drilled holes, and tomorrow we'll run cables to the top of the wall. So we'll come along down here, and we'll come along up the top, and it should pull right back.
And I think that if the cables accomplish what we hope they will, which is to hold the structure on the mountain, keep it from cascading down, that was our aim. Just to do not the minimum, but certainly not the maximum. The question of how far to take a restoration or a rehabilitation it's complex. For the most part, we pretty much adhere to what the Colorado State Historic Society has arranged as a guideline. We tried to stay true to what would have been original, which is rough sawn lumber, the species of which was all native, and you just try to, as best as you can, if it's going to be new, at least mimic the conditions or what they would have had available to them.
We're looking to really understand what is character defining about those places. What is it that conveys the history of the area or the site or the man who lived there, whatever it might be that the history is significant for in that area. We need to use some accuracy and some care in the way we treat those places.
Safety up there was a very major project. I mean, you had to really keep an eye on all the guys, and weather conditions with the lightning, just constantly watching out for the guys and paying attention. But we didn't have anybody, I don't think we even had anybody step on a nail all the time we were up there. I mean, everything went very, very well.
The San Juans probably had more failures than they had successes. The Galena Mountain, which is where the old 100 is, made some money early on. The Neogold brothers went up there and for probably 10 or 15 years made money. But then they tried to do more, and as it turned out, the ore didn't go in depth, meaning that they didn't make money.
The mining company only lasted from 1904 through 1908. The mine went back to the brothers in 1908, and sadly, they were very poor. You could read in the courthouse records where sometimes they'd lose the mine to taxes, sometimes they'd scrape up enough money to pay the taxes. Reinhard Niegold, with his fortunes that he hoped to make, had always hoped to build a castle in the clouds on Galena Mountain here. Unfortunately for Reinhard, he died at an early age, in his mid-50s, in 1906, probably of silicosis, and his dream of the castle in the clouds was unrealized. Though I feel that where the boarding house is and the Tram house was actually Reinhard's castle in the clouds.
The investment of roughly $1 million into the Old Hundred mine saw the return of only $380,000, a pattern that would sadly characterize every subsequent mining operation on Galena Mountain. After nearly 20 years of inactivity, several different companies attempted to restart mining operations in the late 1920s and again in the 1930s. The boarding house at 7 Level was occupied one last time in 1937 when this crew, led by H.W.C. Prommel, spent a month collecting ore samples with the intention of restarting operations once again at the Old Hundred. Continuing on for decades, even into the early 1980s, investors continued to pour money into Galena Mountain in hopes of finding her elusive riches. Time after time, however, the mountain swallowed money and gave back none, especially to the Dixie-Lynn Mining Corporation, who would post a staggering $6 million loss in 1971. Little remains on the floor of Cunningham Gulch to remind modern observers of the century-long drama played out on Galena Mountain. Tram cables and wooden towers rising up to the terminal at 7 Level are all that remain of the many technical achievements developed here as a matter of necessity.
The technology that was developed here, this was the Silicon Valley of its time. Millions of acres were given to private individuals and mining companies to open up the West. That's true history. That's true history. And we need to tell that story.
In September of 2002, crews once again gathered in Cunningham Gulch with the intention of repairing the tram house at 7 Level. Once again, the Colorado Division of Minerals and Geology and the Bureau of Land Management would contribute helicopter time and funding for a $25,000 effort to rebuild the upper walls and replace the roof. The State Historical Fund would also contribute funds for the completion of a documentary film underway since 1999. With the necessary resources in place, success of the project was far from assured, however, as early season snowstorms blanketed the mountains and hampered flying operations and access to the site. Weeks after dropping a second load of materials at 7 Level, a brief window of clear weather would miraculously allow enough time to complete the work at 7 Level and allow many more generations to come an opportunity to look with wonder at a truly incredible chapter of history.
This is just amazing what these people have done up here. Our crew, what they've done.
We try a variety of different things. We use what materials are available a lot of times, and perhaps what will be most significantly true perhaps to what people would expect to see. You know, maybe some of that crudeness in stabilizing it is what people expect rather than having a concrete buttress put up, which, you know, yeah, we could fly the concrete in and make it really nice, but is that what we really hope to accomplish?
We have a bit of an issue here of ruin stabilization versus reconstruction. We're not inclined to really reconstruct a lot of historic buildings that are gone, that are lost. So it's the criticality of timing is important, and also the will of the local people to support this kind of project. And we had that support in Silverton. There's been good partnership here, and the results are exemplary, very positive.
You know, this was such a success because there were so many different people and different challenges, and there was certainly a lot of room for, you know, error and missteps and uncoordination, but none of that really happened. It was just incredibly successful. It meant a lot for our program to be involved in the stabilization of this historic site. We just are very happy and proud to be part of that project.
Really, just this kind of an interaction and partnership was unique, but it has been so successful that now this is kind of the poster child for many other stakeholders, groups, and partnerships throughout the country. When you have such a rich history, it's good to help the people preserve it, and that's where the BLM and the Forest Service philosophy comes from.
It's something that's important, I think. It's something that's important to Silverton and San Juan County's economy. People come here to see our old buildings, and so being now a tourist economy, that's critical that we save what we can, because that's what people want to see. It's important, I think, on a cultural level. We are, as a country, becoming more and more removed from our roots. By and large, most people live in cities, and they just can't imagine a place like this. This is Shangri-La to them. Between the scenery and the beautiful historic little town, they just can't believe it. If I never do anything else for historic preservation again, this will be the proudest thing that I have done, is to spearhead this project.